Recently, I released a video about BuzzFeed's Why the Electoral College is Useless in 8 Minutes video and debunked their argument, and it was mostly well received. Mostly. Your videos are getting pretty bad. Even your debunking video is bad. I started watching you for one reason, because you gave me a different perspective on Trump, but your videos just got worse and worse. Electoral College is garbage. You don't even have to be a constitutional scholar to understand it, it's antiquated. This is probably the worst YouTuber there is. Aw, you're sweet. I came to find out why the Electoral College was actually a good idea and why the US should keep it. Instead, I just watched some dude taking shots at a BuzzFeed lady for 10 minutes. What a waste of time. Sad face. The point of my video was to tear apart BuzzFeed's video. It wasn't meant to be an in-depth argument for the Electoral College. But with that, I've decided to take some of the bigger arguments against the Electoral College and debunk them. You're welcome. But before that, here's a refresher on how the Electoral College works. Every 10 years, after the United States Census is conducted, each state is assigned congressional districts based on total population. A state with a large population like New York has 27 congressional districts, while a state like Montana has 1 congressional district. On top of that, each state has 2 United States senators. When you add them all together, you get the number of electoral votes that each state carries. There are a total of 538 electoral votes up for grabs. To win the presidency, you need to win 270 electoral votes. Pretty simple, right? Okay, there's a little bit more to the process, but that's essentially how it functions. So the first argument is that other countries use the popular vote method, so the United States should as well. And if they don't, they're wrong.
In most countries in the world, the person who wins the popular vote becomes president.
But thankfully, we're not like most countries in the world. So the question is, when it comes to choosing a president and vice president, why do we use the Electoral College and not some nationwide popular vote like the other countries? Well, let's go back into history a little bit. In the 18th century, America was made up of 13 British colonies. When the colonies declared independence from the British in 1776, these colonies became the 13 original states of the United States of America. The US Constitution was created to preserve the independence and sovereignty of the states, while also providing a federal government and establishing the executive and judicial branches. So wait, why didn't they just eliminate their borders and become one big entity called America? Then they could vote for things using the popular vote. You know, to make it simpler for people in the 21st century to understand. Well, look at it this way. Each state in the United States is basically comparable to a country. These states have cities and localities that have different sized populations, different lifestyles, different culture, and they produce different goods and services. And as such, each state has different values. So what's right for Texas might not be right for New York, and what's right for New York might not be right for Alaska, and so on. The United States of America is a constitutional federal republic. The federal government was designed to give each state autonomy over how it is governed and to protect their values, just as long as those values aren't breaking federal law and/or unconstitutional. So each state gets a say when it comes to how the federal government rules over them. And of course, I'm talking about Congress. Congress is made up of 435 voting members in the House of Representatives and 100 senators. The number of House seats each state is allotted is based on population, and it's roughly 711,000 per district. For example, here's a congressional map of New York. It currently has 27 congressional districts, and a state like Delaware has 1 congressional district. Now, each state, regardless of population, has 2 senators. This was decided during the Constitutional Convention because small states like Delaware did not want larger states to be able to decide everything. So instead of checks and balances, there would be mob rule. So to reiterate, a state with a large population like California has 55 electoral votes, while a state like Montana has 3 electoral votes. So the next argument against this system is how smaller populated states somehow have more voting power than states with larger populations. Here's a clip from Al Jazeera.
Let's say you live in Vermont, which has 3 electors. There's 1 elector for roughly 168,000 people. But if you live in a more populous state like New York with 29 electors, you get 1 elector for around 535,000 people. That means a Vermont vote is over 3 times as powerful as a New York vote.
Of course, this is a false equivalence. You're not supposed to be comparing a voter from one state with a voter from another state, because remember, each state is different and are considered partly as distinct and co-equal societies and partly as unequal members of the same society. It's literally that simple.
The question before us now in the Electoral College question is, are we going to actually live up to the promise of one person, one vote?
One person, one vote is the premise that each individual vote has to carry roughly the same amount of weight as every other vote. But this only applies in elections within a state. And that phrase doesn't come from the Constitution, by the way. It comes from a series of Supreme Court cases about legislative districts containing unequal populations. But since Chris Hayes doesn't actually understand how a constitutional republic works, he thinks that everything needs to be fair and equal.
And this might be for another show, but you may have noticed the same number of senators represent the 40 million people of California and the 500,000 people of Wyoming. Not really one person, one vote-y.
So either he doesn't understand how checks and balances work, or he just doesn't care. Only Chris Hayes could make the argument that the allocation of senators is somehow unfair. What a fucking genius. The next argument is about the electors themselves. Here's a clip from the BuzzFeed video.
We're actually voting for an elector that goes to the Electoral College and then they vote for the president.
Originally, state legislators would choose their electors. These electors would then have a substantive discussion or debate, and then they would cast their ballot for president and vice president. But over the years, this process has evolved to states holding a popular vote, and then the electors, who are chosen by party officials, pledge their vote to the popular will of the state. So the argument here is that sometimes an elector will choose someone other than the winner. Here's a clip from Mr. Beat's video on the matter.
These electors usually look at who the majority of their state voted for and vote with them, but still, they could vote for whoever they want. When this happens, they are called faithless electors, meaning they cast their vote for someone other than who the majority of their state voted for. This has happened 167 times in American history and 10 times in the 2016 election.
First of all, faithless electors, while annoying, are rare and have never flipped an election when casting deviant votes for the losing candidate. Here are some stats. As of the 2020 election, out of the 24,045 electoral votes counted across 59 presidential elections, only 165 deviant votes have been cast. And what Mr. Beat isn't telling you is that out of the 165 times deviant votes have been cast, 63 of them were cast for another candidate due to the death of the nominee. In total, only 27 faithless electors voted for another presidential candidate, and only one of those votes were for the presidential nominee's opponent. So to prevent faithless electors from casting deviant votes, the simple thing would be for each state to make laws that would invalidate faithless votes and be done with it. But then again, it's more fun to complain about things than actually find a solution. Another argument is that the United States is supposed to be a democracy. Take this clip from Mr. Beat, who is responding to a Steven Crowder video.
The United States has never been a democracy.
The United States has never been a democracy. He's so bold with that statement, but I cringe every time I hear it. It's so utterly wrong.
Okay, Crowder just said that the United States has never been a democracy. Mr. Beat says that Crowder is wrong. Here's his explanation.
Yes, we have democracy. It's called voting. Okay, if you claim that we don't have democracy, then why bother even having elections? What is the point?
So again, when Crowder made the statement that the United States is not a democracy, that's because it isn't. And when Mr. Beat says that Crowder is claiming that we don't have democracy, it's because he's not listening to words. Crowder never said that. Democracy does not exist on the federal level, but it does exist on the state level. To clarify, we don't have a national election, there are 50 separate state elections. Because again, the United States is a republic.
The founders wanted it that way.
I don't care if they did. It's wrong.
But yeah, let's get rid of the Electoral College, which the United States has been successfully using for centuries, because a guy arguing with a puppet doesn't understand what a republic is.
It's wrong.
Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, sharing, and slamming that like button. A special thanks to Poofy, who you can follow on Twitter at Saint Sundaday. Definitely worth the follow. And you can follow me on Twitter and Parler at Don't Walk Run. Thanks again for tuning in. Be sure that you're still subscribed to the channel. And as always, I hope to see you next time.